The wind howled across the gray plains of Epsilon Eridani III's moon, kicking up fine red dust that clung to everything. Outpost Theta sat alone in the middle of nowhere, a cluster of metal domes, solar panels, and communication towers surrounded by a low fence that did little more than mark the edge of human space. Inside, life moved slowly. Scientists studied alien soil, engineers kept the air recyclers running, and one small girl, Mira Cho, dreamed of exploring the stars. Mira was 8 years old. Her mother, Dr. Lena Cho, was one of the top exobiologists on the team. She had brought Mira to the moon because Earth was too dangerous back then. Wars, floods, and food shortages had made life hard. Out here, at least, there was peace. And quiet. Too much quiet, Mira sometimes thought. She missed school. She missed other kids. But she loved the sky. At night, 3 moons hung above, casting silver light over the rocks. During the day, the sun was small and pale, like a cold coin in the sky. Mira liked to sit by the observation window and sketch the strange plants that grew in the lab. Twisting vines with blue leaves, mushrooms that glowed when touched. One morning, a solar flare warning flashed on every screen in the outpost. "All personnel, stay inside," the voice said over the speakers. Radiation levels rising. Perimeter shields active in 10 minutes. Most people obeyed. But Mira had left her favorite sketchbook near the edge of the research garden, the one just outside Dome 3. She'd been drawing a new kind of lichen when the alarm went off. She didn't think. She just ran. She slipped out through a service hatch before the automatic locks engaged. The air was thin but breathable, thanks to terraforming, and cold. She ran, her boots crunching on the gravel path, her breath puffing white in the air. She grabbed the sketchbook from where it lay near a rock, then turned to go back. But the hatch was sealed. She pounded on it. "Open, please." No answer. The comms on her wristband crackled, then died. The flare had knocked out local signals. She was alone. Panic rose in her chest. She tried to remember what her mother taught her. If you're lost, stay put. Don't wander. But the wind was getting stronger, and something moved in the distance, shadows between the rocks. Mira backed away, clutching her sketchbook like a shield. She tripped over a root and fell hard, scraping her knee. Blood welled up, bright red against her pale skin. She bit her lip to keep from crying. Then she heard it. A low, guttural growl. From behind a ridge, 3 creatures emerged. They were tall, with 6 legs and long, curved claws. Their eyes glowed yellow. Native predators. The scientists had warned about them, fast, aggressive. They didn't like humans, but they hated the smell of blood even more. Mira froze. Her heart pounded so loud she thought the creatures could hear it. One of them sniffed the air, then charged. She closed her eyes, but the attack never came. Instead, there was a sharp hiss like metal cutting air. A blur of dark green shot between her and the predator. It was tall, taller than a man, with armored skin, 4 arms, and eyes like black glass. It wore a strange suit covered in symbols that shimmered in the light. The alien. Mira didn't know its name yet, swung a curved blade with 2 of its hands while blocking the other. Predators with a shield made of some kind of energy. The fight was fast and brutal. One predator fell, then another. The last one fled, yelping. Silence returned. The alien turned to Mira. She flinched, expecting anger or fear. But it didn't speak. It just looked at her, then at her bleeding knee. Slowly, carefully, it knelt. It reached out. Not to grab her, but to gently lift her by the arms. Its touch was firm, but not rough. It checked her for more injuries. Its movements calm, almost gentle. Then it picked her up like she weighed nothing and began walking. Mira didn't struggle. She was too scared, too confused. But as they moved, she noticed something strange. The alien's side was torn open. Dark purple blood seeped through its armor. It had been hurt protecting her. They walked for what felt like hours, though it was probably only minutes. Finally, they reached the edge of the human outpost. The fence. The sealed hatch. The alien stopped. It set Mira down just outside the main gate. Then with great care it pulled a dagger from its belt. The blade was black, etched with glowing lines. It drove the dagger into the ground at Mira's feet, hilt up. It bowed its head once, just slightly, then turned and walked away, back into the red dust. Inside the outpost, alarms blared. People shouted. The gate opened and her mother came running, tears streaming down her face. She grabbed Mira and held her tight. "Don't ever do that again," Lena sobbed. "I thought I lost you." Later, medics cleaned Mira's knee. Engineers scanned the area but found no trace of the alien, except the dagger. It didn't match any known species in the database. The scientists were baffled. Why would a stranger risk its life for a human child? Back on Earth, the news spread slowly at first. A fuzzy security camera clip showed the alien fighting the predators, then leaving the dagger. Someone posted it online with the title, "Who Saved Her?" Within days, it went viral. Millions watched the short video. People called the alien a hero. Others called it a myth. But governments took notice. This was the first confirmed contact with a new intelligent species, and it had chosen to protect a child. No one knew the alien's name. No one knew its species. But on the outpost logs, someone wrote, "Subject identified as Guardian. Action. Defended human minor at great personal risk." Dr. Cho sent a full report to Earth Command. She included Mira's sketch of the alien, drawn from memory the next morning. In the drawing, the creature looked kind. Its eyes weren't scary. They looked sad and strong. Weeks passed. The dagger remained embedded in the soil, untouched. No one dared remove it. It became a kind of monument. And far away on a distant world, a warrior named Vorak stood before his clan elders. His wounds had healed, but the mark of his choice remained. He had seen a small life in danger. He had acted. By the oldest law of his people, that act bound him and his entire bloodline to the protection of that life, and all who shared its kind. He did not regret it. Back on the moon, Mira sometimes stood by the fence at night looking out into the dark. She didn't know his name, but she whispered thank you into the wind, hoping it might reach him. And on Earth, in quiet rooms filled with maps and star charts, leaders began to wonder if one alien would risk everything for one child. What did that say about humanity? They didn't have an answer yet. But they knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. The video of the alien saving Mira Cho spread like fire across Earth's networks. At first, people shared it because it was strange and moving. A tall, green-skinned being with 4 arms fighting off monsters to protect a little girl. It felt like a dream. But soon governments and space agencies took notice. This was not a dream. It was real contact. Within days, Earth's United Nations Space Command, called UNSC, called an emergency meeting. Scientists, diplomats, and military leaders gathered in a large room deep under Geneva. Screens showed the same short clip over and over. The alien arriving, the fight, the dagger in the ground, the quiet walk away. "What species is this?" asked General Rourke, a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. "No match in any database," replied Dr. Eris, the lead xenolinguist. "But we've picked up faint signals from the Epsilon Eridani system. They're not random. They're structured. Someone is talking out there." Then a bigger surprise came. A ship, unlike any human design, entered the edge of human-controlled space. It was sleek, dark, and silent. It did not attack. It did not send a message. It just hovered near the edge of the solar system, waiting. UNSC sent a peaceful signal. "We thank you for protecting our child." The reply came 3 days later, in a voice that sounded like stone grinding against stone. "We are the Cathari. We do not speak of those under blood oath protection." No one understood what that meant, not at first. On Epsilon Eridani III's moon, Mira went back to school lessons over video link. Her mother kept her close, but Mira wasn't scared anymore. She felt safe. She even started wearing a small pendant her mother made, a silver copy of the dagger left behind. Meanwhile, the Cathari ship stayed in place. It didn't move closer. It didn't leave. Earth sent more messages. The Cathari only repeated the same line. "We do not speak of those under blood oath protection." Frustrated, Earth asked the Galactic Concord for help. The Galactic Concord was not a government. It was more like a club of spacefaring species, old civilizations that had been traveling the stars long before humans built their first rocket. Humans were new members, barely accepted. Many in the Concord saw Earth as loud, messy, and too emotional. When Earth brought the Cathari message to the Concord Assembly, a huge chamber floating near Jupiter, they were met with silence. Then, Ambassador Vex of the Zenthari spoke. The Zenthari were tall with smooth gray skin and cold eyes. "They had never liked humans. This is a waste of time," Vex said. "The Cathari are warriors. Their blood oath is an old custom. It means nothing in modern law. And this human child was outside safe zones. She broke the rules. The Cathari acted out of pity, not duty. Other species nodded. Some whispered that humans were careless, bringing children to dangerous places. But then a Cathari delegate entered the chamber. No one had seen a Cathari up close before. It stood 7 feet tall, covered in dark green armor. Its face was sharp, its eyes unreadable. It walked to the center of the room and stood in silence. The head of the Concord, an old being named Orlan, asked, "Cathari representative, do you confirm your message? Do you claim protection over the human child?" The Cathari did not look at Orlan. It stared straight ahead and said, "Vorak of Clan Drex shielded a life in peril. By the first law, that life and all who share its bloodline are now under our oath. To harm them is to shame us. We will not allow it." A murmur ran through the chamber. "Bloodline?" someone asked. "You mean all humans?" The Cathari turned its head slowly. "Yes." The room fell silent. Back on Earth, news of this spread fast. People were stunned. One act of kindness had tied an entire alien species to humanity's fate. But not everyone was happy. In the Concord, the Zenthari and 2 other species called for a special vote. They argued that humans were not full members of the galactic community. They had no ancient treaties, no shared history, and now they were using an old Cathari custom to gain protection they didn't deserve. "They are hiding behind honor," Vex said during a closed session. "If we allow this, every young species will do the same. Chaos will follow." The Concord agreed to hold a vote. The question was simple. Should humans be granted full diplomatic protection under Concord law? If the vote passed, humans would be safe. If it failed, they would be labeled unprotected non-signatories, a fancy way of saying no one has to help you if you're attacked. Earth had 2 weeks to prepare. On Earth, panic began to grow. News channels showed maps of alien fleets moving near human borders. Some were just patrols. Others looked like they were getting ready for something worse. In schools, children asked, "Are we going to be safe?" In markets, people bought extra food. In homes, families held each other tighter. But in the UNSC war room, General Rourke did not panic. He studied the Cathari message again and again. Then he called Dr. Eris. "What does blood oath protection really mean to them?" he asked. Dr. Eris pulled up old records from early Cathari signals. Songs, stories, war chants. "It's not just a promise," she said. "It's sacred. If a Cathari shields someone even by accident, their entire clan must defend that person for life. If they fail, they lose honor. In their culture, that's worse than death." Rourke nodded slowly. "So they're stuck with us." "Yes," said Eris, "but they don't seem to mind." Rourke smiled for the first time in days. "Then maybe we're not the ones who need saving." He called an emergency meeting with Earth's global leaders, presidents, prime ministers, generals from every nation. For once, they all agreed to listen. "We've been thinking about this wrong," Rourke told them. "We've been begging for protection like we're weak. But the Cathari didn't save Mira because she was weak. They saved her because it was right. And now they're bound to us by honor." He stood up. "So let's stop acting like victims. Let's act like allies." The leaders were quiet. Then one by one they nodded. 2 days before the Concord vote, Earth sent a new message, not to the Cathari, but to the entire Concord. It was short and clear. Earth acknowledges the blood oath of Clan Drex. In return, Earth declares the Cathari species under our protection. Any harm done to them will be answered by all human forces. We guard those who guard us. The message shocked everyone. The Zenthari laughed. "Humans are bluffing," Vex said. "They have no fleet strong enough to challenge us." But others were not so sure. On the Cathari ship near the solar system, the commander received Earth's message. It read it 3 times. Then it sent a single word back to Earth. "Accepted." In the Concord chamber, the day of the vote arrived. Ambassador Vex stood and said, "Humans are reckless. They bring children to war zones. They twist old laws to suit their needs. They do not deserve our protection." Then Earth's delegate, a young woman named Captain Nia Okoro, stepped forward. She was not a politician. She was a pilot who had flown rescue missions on Mars and Titan. She spoke plainly in simple words. "We did not ask for this oath," she said. "A child got lost. A warrior chose to help. That tells us more about the Cathari than any treaty ever could. And it tells us something about ourselves. We are worth protecting, not because we are strong, but because we are human." She paused. "And if that is not enough for you, then know this. Earth will protect the Cathari with everything we have. Not because we must, but because it is right. The room was silent. The vote began. One by one, species cast their choice. Some said no, the Zenthari, the Veln, the Soren, but others, smaller, quieter species, said yes. They remembered times when no one protected them. They saw something in Earth's words they hadn't seen in centuries, courage mixed with kindness. In the end, the vote failed. Humans were declared unprotected, but something unexpected happened. As the results were announced, the Cathari delegate stepped forward again. "Then we withdraw from the conquered," it said. "If you will not protect those under our oath, we have no place here." And with that, the Cathari ship turned and left the solar system, but it did not go home. It moved to a point between human space and the Zenthari border, and stopped. It was a warning. On Earth, people watched the news in silence. They had lost the vote, but they had gained something else. A friend who would stand with them no matter what. General Rourke looked at the stars that night and said, "Let them come. We're ready." And far away on a quiet moon, Miracho drew a new picture. This time it showed two figures, one human, one Cathari, standing side by side, facing the dark together. She didn't know what would happen next. But she knew one thing: they were not alone anymore. The vote was over. Earth had lost. The Galactic Conquered had declared humans unprotected. That meant no one had to help them if trouble came. No rescue, no warning, no justice. To many in the galaxy, humans were now fair game. But something strange happened after the vote. Instead of hiding or begging, Earth grew quiet. Too quiet. In cities across the planet, people did not panic. They prepared. Factories that once made cars and phones began building parts for ships. Schools taught students how to read star maps and send emergency signals. Farmers grew extra food. Doctors stored medicine. It was not fear that moved them. It was purpose. And at the center of it all was General Elias Rourke. He was not a young man. His hair was gray, his face lined with years of hard choices. But his eyes were sharp and his voice carried weight. After the vote, he stood before the Global Senate, a room filled with leaders from every nation on Earth, and spoke without notes. "They think we are weak because we care," he said. "They think kindness is a flaw. But look what happened. One alien saw a child in danger and chose to help. That tells us more about them and about us than any war ever could." He paused, then said the words that would change everything. "If the Cathari honor demands they guard us, then Earth declares we will guard them in return." The room was silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, every leader stood up, not because they were ordered to, but because they believed it. Within hours, Earth's message went out across all channels, in every known language. By order of the United Earth Government, the Cathari species is hereby placed under full human protection. Any act of harm against the Cathari will be treated as an act of war against Earth. We stand with those who stood with us. The message was simple, clear, and it spread fast. On the Zenthari homeworld, Ambassador Vex laughed when he heard it. "Humans are bluffing," he told his council. "They have 50 ships. We have 500. They will fold like paper." But others were not so sure. In the outer systems, small trading worlds watched closely. Many of them had been pushed around by the big powers for years. They had no armies, no voice. But they remembered what it felt like to be alone. And now Earth, a young, loud, messy species, was standing up not just for itself, but for another. That meant something. Back on Earth, Captain Nia Okoro was put in charge of the new defense plan. She wasn't a general. She was a pilot who had once flown a rescue mission through an asteroid storm to save a mining crew. People trusted her because she never left anyone behind. She gathered every ship Earth had, military cruisers, cargo haulers, science vessels, even old training ships. Some were fast, some were slow, but all of them could carry people, supplies, or weapons. "We're not just building a fleet," she told her team. "We're building a promise." Meanwhile, the Cathari ship that had been waiting near the solar system sent a new signal. It was not words this time. It was coordinates. A meeting point in deep space far from any planet. Earth sent one ship to meet them. A small scout vessel with Captain Okoro on board. When they arrived, the Cathari ship opened its bay. No weapons were raised. No threats were made. From the ramp walked Vorak, the same warrior who had saved Mira. He looked older now. His armor was scarred, but his eyes were calm. Through a translator he spoke. "You did not have to do this." Captain Okoro stepped forward. "We didn't do it because we had to. We did it because it was right." Vorak nodded slowly. Then he placed a hand over his chest, a Cathari sign of deep respect. "Then know this, Clan Drex will stand with you. Not because the law says so, but because your heart is true." The two species shared no long speeches, no treaties signed in ink, just a look, a nod, and a silent understanding that would echo across the stars. Back on Earth, news of the meeting spread. People felt something they hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. But trouble was coming. Far beyond the human border, 3 Zenthari warships gathered near the Helios Rift, a narrow path through space that led straight to Cathari trade routes. The Zenthari claimed they were patrolling, but their weapons were charged. Their shields were up, and their orders were clear: test Earth's promise. If humans did nothing, the Zenthari would move closer. If humans fought, they would be crushed. It was a trap. But Earth did not send warships first. Instead, they sent everything. When the Zenthari ships arrived at the Helios Rift, they expected a few human fighters, maybe a cruiser or two. What they saw made their commanders freeze. Stretching across the rift was a line of ships, not just military, but civilian. Medical frigates with red crosses painted on their hulls, rescue tugs with open bays, freighters loaded with food and water, even school ships used for student training, their windows filled with young faces. And in the center, flying the Earth flag, was Captain Okoro's command vessel. Every ship broadcast the same message on open frequency. "We are here to protect our protectors." The Zenthari commander, a proud officer named Krell, was furious. "This is a trick," he growled. "They send children and doctors to scare us?" But his second-in-command was uneasy. "Sir, if we fire on them, the whole galaxy will see. They are not hiding behind weapons. They are standing in the open. That is not weakness. That is courage." Krell hesitated. He had orders to test Earth, but attacking unarmed ships, especially ones carrying children, would make the Zenthari look like bullies. And in the eyes of the smaller species, that could be worse than losing a battle. Still, he could not back down. Not in front of his crew. "Fire a warning shot," he ordered. "Aim just ahead of their lead ship." A bright beam of energy shot from the Zenthari ship. It exploded in the empty space in front of Captain Okoro's vessel. Silence followed. Then, something unexpected happened. Every human ship activated their emergency beacons. Hundreds of red lights blinked to life. Loud, clear distress signals filled the comms, signals that every ship in the galaxy was trained to answer. "Mayday, mayday. Civilian fleet under threat at Helios Rift." It was not a call for war. It was a call for witnesses. Captain Okoro's voice came over the open channel, calm and strong. "We do not seek fight, but we will not move. Harm us and you declare war not just on Earth, but on every being who believes in helping others." The Zenthari bridge fell silent. Krell stared at the screen. He saw not enemies, but people, men and women, young students, doctors ready to heal, and behind them, the quiet strength of a species that refused to bow. He thought of his own children back home. What if they were out there? He turned to his second. "Signal retreat. Full withdrawal, but sir, now!" The Zenthari ships turned and left the rift. On Earth, people held their breath, then cheered, not because they had won a battle, but because they had stood together and not backed down. In the conquered, the smaller species took notice. They began talking in secret. If Earth would protect the Cathari, who else might they protect? And more importantly, what if they stood together? Back on the moon near Epsilon Eridani III, Mira Cho heard the news. She didn't understand all the politics, but she understood this. The alien who saved her was now safe because her people said so. That night she wrote a letter. She didn't know if it would ever reach him, but she wrote it anyway. "Dear Vorak," it said, "thank you for saving me. Now we save you. That's how friends work." She folded it carefully and gave it to her mother, who promised to send it on the next supply ship heading toward Cathari space. And far away, in the dark between stars, 2 species, once strangers, now stood side by side, Not because they were strong, but because they chose to be kind. The galaxy watched, and for the first time in a long time it felt like something good was beginning. The Zenthari left the Helios Rift, but they did not go far. Their ships waited just beyond the edge of human sight, watching. Waiting for Earth to make a mistake, but Earth did not celebrate. They knew the test was not over. The Zenthari would be back, and next time they might not fire a warning shot. General Rourke called Captain Okoro and her team to a quiet room deep under the mountains of Switzerland. No cameras, no recorders, just a table, a star map, and the weight of what came next. The Zenthari think we're soft, Rourke said. They think we sent doctors and school ships because we're afraid to fight. But we know the truth. We sent them because we wanted the galaxy to see who we are. He pointed to a red dot on the map, the Helios Rift. They'll come back. Not with 3 ships. With 30? Maybe more. And they won't warn us, Captain Okoro nodded. Then we meet them with more than beacons this time. No, Rourke said. We meet them the same way. With everything we are. That was the plan. Not to hide behind weapons, but to stand open, brave, clear, and united. Because if Earth showed fear, the galaxy would see weakness. But if they stood firm without hate, even in danger, they might change more than just one battle. Over the next weeks, Earth prepared. Not for war, but for witness. Every ship that could fly was checked. Every pilot trained. But this time they did not load extra missiles. They loaded extra med kits, extra food, extra water. They painted clear signs on their hulls. Rescue, medical, civilian. They made sure every ship had a working distress beacon, and that every crew knew how to use it. On Mars, engineers worked day and night to finish 3 new hospital ships. On Luna, teachers held classes on the history of peace, how small acts of courage had stopped wars before. In Africa, South America, Asia, and Europe, people gathered in squares and parks, not to protest, but to light candles for the crews heading into space. No one was forced to go. Every person on those ships volunteered. Among them was Mira's mother, Dr. Lena Cho. She signed up to serve on a medical frigate. When Mira cried and asked why, Lena held her close. Because someone saved you, she said. Now it's our turn to save others. Mira didn't understand everything, but she understood that. Then the call came. Zenthari ships, 28 of them, were moving toward the Helios Rift again. This time they were not alone. 2 other species, the Veln and the Sorin, had joined them. They called it a peacekeeping force, but their weapons were live. Their shields were up, and their path led straight through human Cathari space. Earth's fleet launched. Not with fanfare. Not with threats. Just a quiet hum of engines as ships left orbit one by one, heading for the rift. Captain Okoro stood on the bridge of her ship, the Hope's Dawn. Around her the fleet stretched out like a chain of light, small, fragile, but unbroken. At the front were the warships, old but strong. Behind them came the freighters loaded with supplies. Then the school ships, their young cadets wide-eyed but steady. And at the very back, the hospital ships, their white hulls glowing in the starlight. They took position across the narrow passage of the rift, not blocking it with force but with presence. When the Zenthari arrived, their commander Krell was stunned. Again? He muttered. They bring children to a war zone? His second-in-command shook his head. They don't think it's a war zone, sir. They think it's a place where help is needed. Krell's hands clenched. He had orders from his High Council. Break their spirit. Show the galaxy that Earth's courage is just noise. He opened a channel. Earth Fleet, you are in violation of neutral space. Stand down or be removed, Captain Okoro answered, her voice calm. This space is not neutral. It is shared, and we are here to protect those who cannot protect themselves, including you if you choose peace. Krell laughed, but it sounded hollow. You speak like poets. We speak with cannons, he gave the order. Target their lead warship. Disable it. No lives lost. A Zenthari gunship turned and fired. The blast hit the Iron Shield, Earth's oldest cruiser. Its shields flared and held, but just barely. Alarms rang on the bridge. Captain Okoro did not return fire. Instead, she gave a new order. All ships, activate full distress signal. Broadcast on all channels. Open comms to every listening world. At once, hundreds of red lights blinked across the fleet. A wave of sound filled the void, not weapons, but voices. Mayday, Mayday. Civilian and medical fleet under fire at Helios Rift. Request witness. Request peace. The message went out in dozens of languages. Human, Cathari, Zenthari, even the old tongue of the Concord. And this time, someone answered. First, a small trader ship from the planet Lyra, barely bigger than a shuttle, moved into view. It had no weapons, just a bright light and a sign. We see you. Then another came. And another. Ships from species Earth had never met. Some with no names, no flags, began appearing at the edges of the rift. They did not join the fight. They just watched, and by watching, they bore witness. Krell stared at his screen. Dozens of new signals, all peaceful, all silent, all saying the same thing without words. We are watching what you do. His hand hovered over the fire command. If he attacked now, the whole galaxy would see Earth's fleet, filled with doctors, teachers, and students burning in space, and they would know who started it. His second-in-command whispered, "Sir, this is not a battle we can win with guns." Krell closed his eyes. He thought of his own daughter, who once asked him, "Do warriors only fight, or do they also protect?" He opened his eyes. "All ships, stand down. Full retreat." The Zenthari fleet turned away. Silence returned to the rift. Then slowly the watching ships began to blink their lights in a pattern. Short, long, short. It was an old signal, used by ancient human sailors. It meant, "Well done." Captain Okoro smiled. Back on Earth, people watched the live feed in homes, schools, hospitals. When the Zenthari turned, a quiet cheer rose, not loud but deep. Not because they had beaten an enemy, but because they had held on to who they were. In the Cathari homeworld, Vorak stood before his clan. He had watched the whole thing. When the human fleet stood firm, he placed his hand over his heart and said, "They are worthy." That night, the Cathari sent a message to Earth. Not through official channels. Just a simple line sent on an open frequency. "We stand with you. Always." And on the moon near Epsilon Eridani III, Mira looked up at the stars. She didn't know all the details. But she knew this: the people who saved her were safe. And her people had helped make it so. She drew a new picture. This time it showed many ships, human, Cathari, and others, flying together in a circle like hands holding hands in the dark. She titled it, "We Watch Each Other." Far away, in the quiet of space, the fleet stayed at the rift a little longer, not to guard a border, but to guard a promise. And for the first time in a long time, the stars felt less lonely. 1 year had passed since the stand at the Helios Rift. The stars were the same, but everything else had changed. On Earth, the day was warm and bright. In cities, towns, and villages, people gathered in parks and squares. Flags flew. Not just national ones, but a new flag too. A circle of many colors with a small child's handprint in the center. It was the symbol of the International Day of Shared Guardianship. A day Earth had created to remember that protection was not just a duty, but a gift. In Geneva, the old UNSC building had been turned into a peace center. Children from 20 different countries sat in a large room, drawing pictures and writing letters. One of them was Mira Cho. She was 9 now, a little taller, a little braver. She still wore the silver dagger pendant her mother had made, and she still carried her sketchbook everywhere. Today she was not drawing monsters or stars. She was drawing Vorak. He was coming. The Cathari had never visited Earth before, but today Vorak would speak at the Global Youth Assembly, a meeting for young people from all over the planet. He had agreed to come not as a warrior, but as a guest, as a friend. Mira's hands trembled a little as she finished the drawing. She added soft lines around his eyes to show kindness. She didn't know if Cathari could smile like humans, but in her picture he did. Outside, a quiet hum filled the air. A Cathari shuttle, small and smooth, landed gently in the field behind the center. No soldiers, no guards. Just Vorak in simple armor, and one young Cathari apprentice at his side. He walked slowly, his steps heavy but calm. People did not cheer. They stood in silence out of respect. Then one child waved. Then another. Soon the whole crowd was waving, not with fear, but with welcome. Inside, Mira waited near the front row. When Vorak entered, his eyes found her right away. He stopped. Then in front of everyone, he knelt, just like he had on the Red Moon a year ago. He did not speak. He just held out a small object wrapped in dark cloth. Mira stepped forward and took it. She opened it carefully. Inside was a carved stone shaped like two hands, one human, one Cathari, holding each other. She looked up at him, eyes wide. "Thank you," she whispered. Vorak placed a hand over his chest. "You are safe," he said in halting English. "We remember." Later he stood at the podium. A translator helped, but he spoke slowly, choosing simple words. "On my world," he said, "we teach that strength is in the arm that fights. But I learned something new. Strength is also in the heart that protects even when it is small. Even when it is afraid." He looked at the children. "You do not need to be big to be brave. You only need to care." After his talk, Mira gave him her drawing. He studied it for a long time. Then he carefully folded it and placed it inside his armor, over his heart. Back on his ship that evening, he would send a message to his clan. The humans are not just strong. They are good, and they teach their young to be kind. That is why they will last. But the change was not just on Earth. Across the galaxy, something new was growing. Small species, ones that had always stayed quiet, always hidden, began to speak up. They had watched what happened at the Helios Rift. They had seen Earth stand with doctors and school ships, not just guns. They had seen the Cathari honor a child's life above politics, and they wanted that for themselves. Led by a group of traders from the Lyra system, 12 species came together and formed something new, the Pact of Mutual Wardship. Their rule was simple. If one of us shields another in good faith, all of us will stand with them. It was not a military alliance. It was a promise that kindness would be protected, not punished. The Galactic Concord, once cold and distant, took notice. At first they ignored the pact, but when even the Veln, a proud old species, joined it, the Concord had to act. They called a special meeting. This time Earth and the Cathari were invited as honored guests, not as outsiders. General Rourke and Vorak stood side by side in the great chamber. Ambassador Vex of the Zenthari watched them, his face unreadable. The head of the Concord, Elder Orland, spoke. The old ways said only power matters. But recent events have shown us something older still, that protection is the root of trust, and trust is the root of peace. Then, with the vote of every member present, the Concord passed a new law. Any species that offers protection to another in good faith shall be granted collective defense rights under galactic law. It was not just a rule. It was a shift in the heart of the galaxy. After the meeting, Vex approached Rourke. He did not smile, but he did not sneer either. "You changed the game," he said quietly. Rourke shook his head. "We didn't change it. We just remembered how it was supposed to be played." Back on Earth, the celebrations continued, but the real change was quieter. In classrooms, teachers spoke of duty not as obedience, but as care. In shipyards, engineers built more hospital ships than warships. And in homes, parents told their children the story of a little girl who got lost and the warrior who chose to help. Mira went home that night with her mother. They sat on the roof and looked up at the sky. "Do you think he'll come back?" Mira asked. Lena smiled. "I think he already has." "In how we treat each other now." Far away on a Cathari world lit by twin suns, Vorak stood on a high ridge. He held Mira's drawing in his hand. The wind tugged at his cloak, but he did not move. He was no longer just a warrior of Clan Drex. He was a bridge. And bridges do not fight. They connect. And across the stars, humanity was no longer just a young, loud species trying to prove itself. They were known as the ones who guarded their guardians, the ones who stood with the weak, the ones who believed that saving one life could change everything. The galaxy had once thought humans were too emotional, too messy, too soft. Now they understood. That softness was their strength, and in the quiet dark between the stars, ships from many worlds flew not with weapons ready, but with lights on, so others would know they were not alone. Mira fell asleep that night with her sketchbook open. On the last page she had written in big, careful letters, "We protect each other, that's how we all stay safe." And somewhere, in the endless sky, a Cathari warrior touched the drawing over his heart and knew it was true.